This next chap, and I think you'll really see the funny side of what I'm about to say now. A few years ago, me and him started sparring because I was quite disenchanted with what the press was saying about our industry. And I gave him a good old shake and I said, look, you know, we need to be better represented for what I call the community of F&I, which I think, you know, we represent today. Well, I'm glad to say that after our initial few punch-ups, Fred Crawley's become a bit of a legend in our world. High integrity, high in trust, also a great advocate and supporter of what we do, and you know, the issues that we all want to tackle. I'm also delighted to inform you that Fred's become a Dr. Huddersfield Town fan, isn't that right? And his wife Kerry has been currently helping me with a little struggle. Did anybody hear me on TalkSport earlier in the year, by the way? No. Some of you might have. Well, Google it, Andy Stewart TalkSport. A little struggle that's been going on in Huddersfield over the stadium shares issue, and he's been helping us with that. Bringing his own unique view of the world, I'd like you to put your hands together for the one and only Mr. Fred Crawley.
Thank you very much, everyone. As Andy may have mentioned, I'm Fred Crawley, and apart from being his personal spin doctor, I'm also, since Seamus shaved, the owner of probably the silliest beard in motor finance. So yeah, I edit along with Richard Brown, who's in the room somewhere. Raise your hand, Richard. Hello. Motor Finance, which is the only magazine dedicated to F&I. It's also the only magazine, as you would have seen from that presentation, which is written entirely in Latin. And it's been described as like Top Gear, but with more spreadsheets. And I am here to talk today a little bit about the relationship between the media and this industry. And actually, when Andy asked me to make a list of the biggest news so far in 2012, which you saw come up there, it was a great excuse to trawl through the back end of our site, that sounded horrible, and find out what had drawn the most attention over the year. Well, as you've just seen, it has been a very busy year. 2012 has been a big one, and what drew people's attention most, unsurprisingly, was the regulatory climate. So the formation of a new regulator and all the mystery surrounding that. The rumblings about commissions disclosure, which I think is going to become a bigger story in the year ahead, and the ongoing ball ache, if you'll excuse the phrase, of PPI. The latter, of course, has not been soothed at all by the revelation that our country's Business Secretary, Dr. Vince Cable, has no idea it's even going on. And I know I receive about 5 messages a week, if not every day, begging me to make a claim against some bastard. I don't know how he manages to avoid it. But that is, as they say, and if you'll pardon the pun, another story. It's natural that fear and uncertainty clouded the headlines over the year. It's a sad fact of the business I work in that the negative is always going to steal the limelight. But for me, the big story of this year was without question a positive one. And the big story is in fact that we, you, the car finance industry, are the big story right now. And before you decide I probably had Jim for breakfast again, let me clarify myself. How to put this? Both in the UK automotive industry and in the asset finance business, which, you know, we're the intersection of, things have been going nicely, but not exactly swimmingly. And to carry on the watery metaphor, I think car finance has been, you know, the real lifeboat in an ocean of mediocrity for both those businesses. We'll run you through the stats briefly. It has been, as Daniel pointed out, an okay year for the car industry. I mean, I think, you know, tough, but September's figures, 8% up year on year. The 2 million unit mark still hasn't been conquered. The SMMT has revised its estimate for the year's total upwards. Probably have to do so a bit again after September, but we're not back in the boom by any means. And likewise in asset finance, according to the FLA stats that came out of their 20th anniversary recently, asset finance business in the UK so far this year, 14 billion, that's an 8% rise, not too shabby given the state of lending elsewhere. But in motor finance, however, we're looking at a new car finance market that's 37% up by value and 26% up by volume so far in this year. Nearly 3/4 of all new cars sold are done so on finance. And even used car finance, which, let's face it, doesn't enjoy the golden kick up the arse from manufacturer finance, enjoyed a 9% rise in volumes over the same period. Now, okay, that's putting it very simply, and I know those headline stats are more complicated than they seem when they're in an FLA press release. We could talk for a very long time about how they slice up and fit into the real world and what you do day in, day out. Generally speaking though, I think we can all recognise good numbers when we see them. And looking at those finance stats next to the much flatter growth curve of the car market as a whole, it's easy to see why finance has become an increasingly important and sometimes absolutely indispensable line of profit for dealers. And if only dealers had access to a magazine and website that did nothing but report on it, I'm just saying. Nevertheless, there is an elephant in the room when it comes to the car finance success story. In fact, there's several elephants. They've got names like Vauxhall, Ford, Volkswagen, huge manufacturers, and they're willing to put vast amounts of capital into moving metal off production lines, 3 or 4 courts, into suburban driveways. Finance is their weapon of choice at the moment, and it's not just captives deploying it. There's a good reason why major funders are fighting at the moment to seize control of manufacturer programs. If you look at Santander taking the flexible finance program for Vauxhall this year, that's an, what is the word? Indication of exactly what important business that is. But that said, I don't want to give the impression that we can thank manufacturer cash alone for all the progress made in the market this year. Arguably most impressive are those independent lenders who've achieved growth while writing non-subsidised, profitable, sensible business. Many of them are in this room. Credit isn't a casual gift to be given in the modern economy, but you're doing it and making a return besides. You're getting people behind steering wheels. You are moving metal. You're employing people in your own businesses and growing the UK economy. Yesterday, David Cameron talked about the UK faced with the choice of sinking or swimming. Well, this industry apparently is opting for the jet ski, and that's good news. And what does the media have to say about it? Well, for the most part, bugger all. I can't tell you how much it mystifies me as someone who writes about this all the time, that an industry this big, this connected with the everyday life of this country goes largely unreported. I think there's 3 reasons for this. First of all, whereas car finance is by definition a consumer industry, a consumer product, it's a B2B industry. And with a few exceptions, it generally tends to be B2B branded. This, sadly, turns the media off. Secondly, it's a non-dramatic industry. There aren't many crippling scandals, dramatic business failures, well, not anymore anyway. And there's very few controversial characters apart from Roger. It just gets on with it as a business. And even though, for the third reason, even though this business isn't the most complicated thing in the world, I mean, I understand it for God's sake, they don't understand what it is. It just doesn't seem, to make sense to national media reporters. And if you don't believe me, I actually had a call from the Daily Mail the other month asking me what F&I and PCP stood for. Fair enough, but this was after they'd written an article criticising the industry for charging high rates, so a bit worrying there. And this third point's an important one, because ignorance breeds suspicion, especially where money lending is involved. We all know the biggest cliche of reporting on the financial crisis was bankers underground concocting incomprehensible financial products to swindle people with. And who are the only people the public trusts less than bankers? Car dealers. Only kidding, it's journalists, but there's not much in it. And in any case, we get an article cropping up either online through Google Alerts, or we see it in the papers every few weeks, urging consumers to stay away from the dodgy dealers who are going to sell them rip-off finance. And needless to say, it's never hard to read between the lines of these stories and see the press release from a high street lender lurking underneath. Because it's a sad fact of modern journalism as well. And we do our best to fight it, but it's the case. We've got to do more in less time, and we rely more and more on press releases. And this is very, very true in national media outlets, where if they get something from M&S or Sainsbury's Finance telling them the car finance is a rip-off, they'll pretty much print that. And it does make for a very simple consumer narrative. High street lenders are advertising 6% rates, and they won't have your car off you if you stop paying. Bang, car finance is a rip-off. And if I'm quoted as saying that in the papers tomorrow, A, I'll be flattered, and B, I'll be furious. I don't need to explain to anyone in this room why this false comparison is so wrong, so I won't waste your time doing so. I tried to write some very long, in-depth articles for the New Statesman about why exactly car finance isn't a crap deal, but guess what? About 4 people read them. And the problem is, the reason for that, it's much easier to cast doubt on something with a quick and inflammatory accusation than it is to offer a long, sensible and well thought out defence. It's like the bit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they're trying the witch. It doesn't matter how logical you are in your defence when there's that many fingers pointing. And it's frustrating to say the least at a time when dealers are concentrating so much on retention, turning to PCP en masse, despite HP commissions, and doing everything they can to get customers not only behind the wheel, but coming back when they need a new car. PPI, the other big story of the year. Just look at the number of complaints that have actually been upheld in the auto industry compared to others, and it's ridiculous to think CMCs are even targeting the dealer industry at all. But the claims keep flowing because people are willing to suspect that they're being ripped off. Well, I don't know anyone in this room that I've spoken to, I can say, is trying to rip their customers off. Good dealers want to sell cars, keep customers happy, and keep them coming back for more. And if finance wasn't the best way to do this, it wouldn't be being used to sell 3/4 of the new cars in the country. The media outside of my office may not truly know who you are yet, but they will, as more cars are sold on finance, and that will keep happening. That's more people driving around on contracts with you and spreading good word of mouth about you. I don't think this industry is going to step back from the forefront of the car industry for some time, and sooner or later, the big boys are going to catch on to the story. You deserve it. In the meantime, you've got us, and we'll do our best to report clearly on what you do. The trade press is there to support the trade, but also to provide an honest mirror of how it's performing. By that token, we're not a PR company. The first thing I tell any new reporter is never to print verbatim or even loosely paraphrase a press release without getting some kind of external opinion. Let's face it, it makes for better reading. But at the same time, we're not your interrogators at all. So often at dinners, drinks, things like this, I'll be talking to people very happily and openly until someone sees my name badge and realises it's from a magazine, and everyone quite sensibly shuts up. However, I would urge you not to worry too much about it, because we wouldn't get very far if we upset people on a daily basis. If Rich or I do want to quote you on anything, remember, we'll always ask first. And a lot of the time we're just interested to know about what's going on so we can be well informed, rather than to write down what you're saying. I'll leave you with a final piece of advice in case you really are in any doubt. If you see a journalist with a beer in his hand, then he's off duty and it's fine to talk about whatever you like. See him with a whiskey in his hand, he's busy, don't interrupt him. And if you see him with a glass of water in his hand, he's probably not a journalist. I look forward to seeing you all tonight.
Sorry, Andy, I forgot. That's good. Yeah, I know you're going to do a Q&A session at the end with Roger, and hopefully what we'll do at the end, guys, is that'll be taken into the write-up in the magazine. But I think we need to just stop you for a second and just ask you, who was this swine who grasped Vince Cable up then?
I don't know, someone with a yellow tie here.
Okay, yeah, I mean this is really, for me, is an important issue because we started a new initiative just last month where we now, we call it Dine with the Directors, so we take myself, Mark and Steve, you might even get an invite, Alex, before long as well. We take, you know, suppliers, customers, you know, we might throw in a lawyer or two just for a bit of a eclectic mix, but we were actually at a dinner with Vince Cable only a couple of weeks ago, and we were allowed one question, and the press secretary, whatever she was called, was coming around checking that we weren't asking anything, you know, that's stumping. And my question was exactly this. You know, Dr. Cable, could you please tell me what measures the government are taking to stop these bogus PPI claims management companies? To which his retort was, I didn't know that was a problem. Which I was absolutely, and I think I texted you there and then out of sheer, you know.
Yeah, I won't repeat what you wrote. Yeah.
You know, and without fast forwarding, and he's kind of now cringing into his chair. We've got a guy coming this afternoon. I think it shows tremendous, let's say, balls to come and address us and talk about what it's like to be involved in this industry. And you know, I sincerely hope you give him the time to speak about it. But you know, let's be honest. I mean, you made a great statement there that nobody wants to rip their customers off. So why are we perceived? You know, we're taking £80 million per month out of the banking system through PPI claims management. And to me, it's just astounding that there's a secretary who didn't know about it. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, Vince Cable never was the biggest fan of banks, for a start. Yeah, at the same time, you know, it sounds to me, from what you told me about that evening, that, you know, Vince is someone with, well, talking of first name terms, Mr. Cable, Dr. Cable, is someone with a lot to say about the auto industry and how well it's doing, and I think probably he's thinking, primarily sort of, British manufacturers doing British car things, which is all very well celebrated. But it sounds to me like he doesn't know about a lot of the real work going on, and it's what I was saying a minute ago. There's an awful lot of very responsible selling going on. I mean, after all, a lot of worries about the CCD being implemented. How many people have actually had nightmares with that since? Well, not many are talking to me anyway.
I mean, does anybody want to just quickly ask? Just get the debates open now. Does anybody want to ask Fred a question about this or anything that he just spoke about in his opening speech? Please. Looking for volunteers. I'll start picking victims before long. Des, where are you, Des?
Hiding over here in the quiet.
There you go. Come on, Des. I mean, obviously this is a subject very, very close to your heart. You and I have had some good, long conversations about this. I mean, what have you got to say to Fred about this, mate?
Yeah, Fred, we've had over 250 claims on PPI, and fortunately, because of my finance background, we put in place right at the start every possible control. We've even got written endorsement from the FSA to say that our procedures were entirely compliant. But we keep getting these bogus claims, and they keep ending up with the FOS. And the FOS appear to have taken, the Financial Ombudsman Service appear to have taken a view that if we've sold a single premium payment protection policy on an HP agreement, and that customer ultimately or subsequently exercises their universal right to VT, then it's an automatic missell.
Yeah. I think early on in this, towards the end of 2010 actually, we were getting noises from the FOS that they understood that concern and were going to do something about it. And I think the assumption they made, probably unwisely, that we made as well, was that this would die down towards the end of 2011, and certainly by the end of this year wouldn't be a major issue. But what I'm getting from word of mouth, and I don't know if this is true for you, is that the claims are still flowing as fast as ever. That automatic assumption of a missell, or at least automatic enough to get through and get a fine, hasn't been cleared up. And we regularly ask the FOS for its position on that, and we'll be happy to report it as soon as we get one. I think at the moment, no news is bad news.
Guys, Fred's going to be around all day. This is seriously your opportunity to tackle these real issues, get them out into the press. I've got to really congratulate you, Fred. You are a great supporter of certainly our network, and I really invite you to speak to this guy. You're always available to take calls about anything, no matter how small it may be, but you'll always give us time. And I really do thank you again for coming and being a supporter. I know you're going to come later on, but guys, put your hands together please for Fred Crawley. Thank you very much.